This article is from the Sydney Morning Herald. It was written by their journalist Alan Ramsey on the 18th of August 2004, so it's a fair while ago. 6 years ago, I wrote in this newspaper, quote, "Telling a lie is easier than killing it, even for a Prime Minister. A lie is a lie. And once it's out on the street, no amount of passing traffic can ever truly skittle it." John Howard told a lie in May 2, 1995. Then he told more lies to reinforce the first one. To protect himself from what he judged a serious threat to his last chance to be Prime Minister, Howard lied and went on lying. Now, 3 years later, he is telling still more lies to hide that first lie. In May 1995, 8 months before the general election, in March 1996, that made him Prime Minister, what Howard lied about was his commitment to a goods and services tax, a GST. That was his infamous never ever pledge. How it happened and how Howard ignored his pledge once he'd become Prime Minister is open and shut. At a Sydney bankers' lunch, where he spoke about the Keating government's coming budget later that month, Howard referred briefly to John Hewson's losing GST policy in the 1993 election and how, quote, "nothing remotely resembling it," end of quote, would be coalition policy in the 1996 campaign. This is the same despicable little runt, and notice I said runt, who intervened to stop a mandatory coroner's inquest into the Port Arthur government instigated terrorist massacre designed to remove firearms from a traumatised population. This massacre was not unlike the 9/11 terror in the US, and for the same reasons. When a businessman asked why, if a GST was so economically sound, Howard wouldn't support it, he gave a long answer which included in part, "We would occasionally like to win, you know. The fact is the last election was a referendum on the GST. There is no way we can have it as part of our policy for the next election." As to what happens some years in the future, I don't know. But the GST cause was lost in the last election. End of his quote. Now, apparently every news outlet ignored it except the Australian, according to this journalist. It ran a column, and basically it was saying, well, Howard's left open the possibility of the coalition considering a GST some years in the future. Now, Howard panicked because he felt maybe this is the last chance I've got to be Prime Minister. So he issued a 4-sentence statement saying, suggestions, quote, this is a quote, "Suggestions I have left open the possibility of a GST are completely wrong. A GST or anything resembling it is no longer coalition policy, nor will it be policy at any time in the future. It is completely off the political agenda in Australia." End of quote. Later that day, confronted by a clamouring press pack, he compounded the lie. Asked if he left the door open for a GST, he said, quote, "No, there's no way a GST will ever be part of our policy," end of quote. And then another question was, "Never ever," with a question mark. So Howard said, "Never ever. It's dead. It was killed by voters at the last election," end of quote. Well, there's nothing equivocal about that. But 27 months later, in August of 1997, less than 18 months after becoming Prime Minister, Howard told the truth by telling more lies. He announced a great adventure in tax reform he wanted to share with the Australian people. 6 months later, we learned the heart and soul of his adventure was to be the introduction of a GST. And how, sorry, and how did Howard rationalise his never ever pledge? He didn't. He simply lied again. Howard told Parliament in April of 1998, I went to the 1996 election saying there would be not a GST in our first term. I go to the coming election saying we are going to reform the tax system. The Australian public are entitled to be told before an election what a government will do after the election. They do not deserve to be misled. I'm sorry I'm laughing. These lying, thieving bastards crack me up. They do not deserve to be deceived. Nothing could be more barefaced. Howard lied about the GST before the 1996 campaign. He lied about these lies during the 1998 campaign. He lied about the reasons he took Australia into the Iraq travesty. Now, such a part of this election, now we are told by someone at the centre of events that he lied about the Children Overboard affair. The central truth is, however grave the charge, that John Howard's Prime Ministership has been a lie from the outset. And I find that quite fascinating because, as I've already mentioned, this is a little slime bucket who intervened to stop a mandatory coroner's inquest into the Port Arthur government-instigated terrorist massacre. Now, I'm hoping to bring a bit more, if I've got time and you can bear watching it, a bit more up-to-date information that's coming to light about Port Arthur. But my main theme I'm trying to develop here is we're dealing with lying little, I was going to call him a turd, but it probably is. But I have no more faith in him than I have in Malcolm. And I have no more faith in Malcolm than I have in John Howard. Now, Malcolm, when he became Prime Minister, the first thing he's done is started talking about a GST. We're going to have to increase the GST by 50%. But we will offset it. It'll be revenue neutral. You won't have to pay any more tax. We'll find some other way around it. Oh yes, just like Johnny said there would be a GST. And even at the first GST, these people started saying, we're going to do away with all sales tax. We're going to do away with land tax. We're going to do away with fuel excise. It's all going to be replaced with a 10% GST. Bullshit. And to Malcolm, I say the same. Now, I'll go on and try and develop this theme from websites that were done at the time on the reversal of the GST, doing away with land tax, sales tax, fuel excise, so that I can show you that they can't help themselves from lying. They will say any damn thing to do what they want to do. Now, I've already shown you that Goldman Sachs leaned on John Howard. They're the ones who wanted the GST, among a whole lot of other things. And he caved into it. Now, Malcolm won't be caving in because Malcolm is part of Goldman Sachs. It'll be at the forefront of his desires.